Hey,
Hello, Elijah. How are you?
good. By
Good.
the way, congratulations on yesterday.
Oh, thank you. Let me tell you, I thought they were just doing photos when they asked me to put the cap and gown. That was the greatest and most wonderful surprise. So I can't tell you how thankful and grateful I am. It was so exciting.
I can imagine. but
Yes, yes. Well,
it
I'm looking forward to talking with you.
yes, and I'm so thankful that y'all took some time out of your day to come talk with me. I just
Definitely.
got done with talking to Howard Ballou, and that was a real great conversation.
I'm sure it was. He's awesome.
and I also talked to Marshall Ramsey earlier today,
Wonderful.
and he said hi.
Oh, tell him hello for me. I don't know why this thing has Melissa Faith Payne on here.
I was wondering that. I was like, wait a minute. Is she?
Yeah.
It's like, what's going on here?
I think what happened is that she may have been on this last, and
Mhm.
I'm trying to see how it, okay, rename. All
Yeah, I
right,
can
here we go.
rename you.
I've got it here. And there we go.
Okay, thank you. Uh, so I wanted to ask you some questions, and we'll have a discussion based around that. And I'm so
Sure.
glad you did this. But I wanted to kind of tell you a little bit about myself, so you can kind of get understand where I'm coming from. I'm a senior at Florence High School, and I do the school news and everything we do at our school, and I really, and especially the past couple of years, have really been very serious about wanting to go into broadcast journalism.
Wonderful.
So I'm really glad to be able to talk with you. Like I said, you and Howard Ballou, especially, and Barbie Batson as well, are ones that I really look up to.
Well, bless you. Thank you so much. We couldn't do this without support from the community. If people didn't watch, we wouldn't stay employed. And so it's important to us. We live in this state. We love this state. I've raised my family here. So has Howard, and so has Barbie. So we are a part of this state. So anytime we can do something, especially when it comes to education, we are glad to do it.
Yes, and I've been here all my life. I live, of course, like I said, in Florence,
Wonderful.
and I really am hoping that one day I'm able to or I would hope WLBT. I would That would be amazing. But
Well, I may be gone by then. I'm getting closer every day to retirement age, but let me tell you, I'll be watching. If I'm not here, I will be watching.
well, we'll definitely miss you when that happens, though. It will be
Um, well, I've got a few years. I've got a few years. As long as I'm healthy and God says, stay, I will be here. And so I've got a few years, but like I said, every day, we every day we age, and I count every day as a blessing. That's for
yes,
sure.
definitely,
Yes.
and I definitely. So I have some questions, and from here. Hold on, gotta pull. All right, here we go. So first off, is how did you start out in this field, and what were your motivations for going into it?
Wow, that is a great question. Actually, I had no intention of being on television or being a journalist. My goal from the time I think I was about 8 or 9 was to be an attorney, and I went to Jackson State University my freshman year because I was the 89th member of my family to go there. So it was just understood I would go to Jackson State. But that desire to be an attorney, I transferred to Mississippi College with the intent of going to their law school after I finished. And while I was there, at MC, I worked in the school radio station. I worked there, but I started out in the athletic department. They heard my voice on the phone and said, "We need to put you over at the radio station." And so I was like, "No, I'm happy here. I want to be," but they encouraged me. So I went to work at the school radio station and ended up doing the news there. And having an on-air radio show. And that's where you really learn about timing and voice. And so it was great training ground. Then one of my friends told somebody at JDX, Randy Bell at WJDX Miss 103, about me. He listened in and said they were looking for someone. So I ended up going over there working at WJDX and Miss 103. And I had been there probably close to 2 years. And there was a weather opening here at WLBT. And I'm still saying to myself, I am doing this for the experience, but I'm going to law school. I am going to law school. And one of my friends encouraged me to come down and audition. And at that time, they did auditions. They didn't have resume tapes. They actually did auditions where you came down and you had to do, just like they do with actors, you had to do an audition. And mine was for the weather. Met Woody Asaph, who I had watched all of my life, was so excited. And was like, I was awestruck, and starstruck and the whole 9 yards. And so he took me into the studio. I had never been in a television station, never been in a studio. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do? He said, the weather. And I looked and there was this gigantic map with no names of the states on it. And I was like, there are no names on. So I'm thinking, what am I supposed to do? And he said again, do the weather. And I'm telling you, there's not a class I had in school that has not been instrumental for me in this job. And that day I thought about my third grade geography teacher, Mrs. Armstrong, who I thought was a WWF wrestler. She was like 7 feet tall. She had muscles, and I thought she was the meanest woman in the world. But and I thought she was picking on me, and I wanted to be out of her class. I thought she hated me, but I thank God for her every day, because she made sure that when you got that A in her geography class, you earned it. And believe me, I earned my A. And so I knew something about every state. I couldn't reach them because I'm short. I'm vertically challenged. I'm only 5 feet tall, but I could talk about every state. So I did the weather audition, and they said, thank you very much. Don't call us, we'll call you, that kind of thing. And I didn't hear anything for 3 months. So I said, okay, let me just move on. They never said, we like you, we don't like you, nothing. I mean, it was just silence. So I got another call asking me to come and do another audition. And I'll be honest with you, I was scared. I didn't want to be rejected. I didn't want them to tell me no. So I said, thanks, but that's okay. I'm in school. I'm working at JDX, Miss 103. I'm working at WHJT, which is Mississippi. I'm good. So that's okay. And a family member encouraged me to come back and audition again, and in very strong terms. And so I came back and did the audition. An hour later, I had the job. And here I am now, almost 39 years later. It'll be 39 years in February. I've been here ever since. So I started out doing weekend weather. And because that was not a full-time position, they actually put me in the personnel department. So I was the personnel assistant producer for children's programming. I worked on Our Playmates. So I had lots of different jobs, Elijah, and it was just very difficult to do all of those jobs and do them effectively and be in school. So I only had 9 hours left, but I focused completely. I jumped completely. Once I got here, I fell in love with broadcast journalism. And so I did weekend weather, was promoted to weekday weather, then was moved into news as a reporter, from that as an anchor. And God is just blessed. I think within the first 2 years of me being here, I was probably moved at least 6 different times to different positions in news. And so it was a real blessing. And I just feel like that was my calling. That's what God chose me to do. And that's why it happened. And it happened so fast. And I'm grateful. I think I would have been a terrible lawyer, but I'm really, really grateful. So that's how I got into it. And it really has been, I'm thankful. I'm thankful that God led me on this path.
And this is something like for me, like I've told the other folks, it's kind of one of those things where I come from a family where basically, which this is nothing by far, this is nothing wrong with this, but I had a lot of things where a lot of people in my family went into trades.
Gotcha.
And
Yes.
like they went
Me
into
too.
trades and they did some did military, and so a lot of them like sports. Well, I was me and my brother really, we ended up being the odd ones where we have no interest in that. And
I
so,
understand.
like for instance, my parents tried to get us into sports, and we did some basket. Have you ever heard of upward basketball?
Yes. Yes, I
Okay,
have.
so like they tried to get us in there, and of course I'm a big Star Wars fan. I've always been a Star Wars person, and I used to pretend that I was in a Star Wars battle during a basketball game.
Oh my gosh.
So that just gives you a picture of where I come from.
Got you. I
so,
understand
so
completely. Well, my kids wanted nothing to do with television. So my daughter is, she's in IT for an insurance company, and my son is a quality and research engineer in Illinois. So I have the broad spectrum there.
but the thing is, as I started out where I wanted to do theater.
Got you. Yes.
Yeah. And I did a lot of theater stuff. I've done a lot with New Stage in Jackson. I've done a lot there, and I do stuff at my church and stuff like that. And that's really the only theater thing I really do anymore is do the church. Me and some others do I try, or at least try to do youth-led church event, church plays and stuff.
Awesome.
And anyway, so but I do a lot. I really started to go and be serious about going into broadcast journalism because we have our class. We have a broadcasting class at our school. We do the school news, and me and a friend of mine do a show called Back to the Movies, where
Oh,
where we do movie news and movie reviews, and we do a lot of fun gimmicks and things, and we just kind of play around and do and do things. We hadn't been able to do as much because of COVID and everything this year.
wow. Right.
We're hoping
Right.
and the fact we have done some Back to the Movies, but there haven't really been much movie activity going on. So
You're right.
we kind of
Right.
ran out of ideas.
Well, you've got some coming out now, and with the new way that they're streaming movies with HBO Max, that's a whole nother different, a whole other conversation. So you've got things that you can do now. They've got that coming out, the new Matrix movie coming out, and the James Bond movie that they kept putting back.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting, and how theaters are adjusting. I know one director does not like the fact that these big movies, you can see them on HBO Max on the same day that they're released in the theaters, and he thinks that's going to hurt theaters.
I know who you're talking about. It's Christopher Nolan.
Yes, right. So you got it.
But anyway, we're planning on starting back in January. We're going to start. I was waiting until Mandalorian finished, and then we're going to do the Mandalorian thing, and then of course like Marvel stuff like WandaVision's coming out and stuff like that. We're going to be doing a lot more next semester. But right now we did Tenet, we did Mulan, and we did a couple news videos, and then that was it. And then we ran out of ideas, and we were like, okay, let's just do some other projects and just put this on hold.
I understand. And it's been kind of the opposite here. We've just had an abundance of news stories.
Oh, I can understand.
COVID, yes. I feel like we have the COVID bureau now.
Well, like I said, with everything going on, a lot of people, there's some people out there that are like, they don't want to listen to news, a lot of stuff going on. And then I've been listening to y'all more here since all this stuff has happened.
Good. Yes.
But
we
what I was trying to say was, I did found that I have a gift for speaking and writing. I do speaker tournament. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
It's with the SBC, the Southern Baptist Convention.
Awesome.
And I had a speech this past summer that they did, and I got placed 4th in the state of Mississippi and got a $3,000 scholarship per year to MC.
That is wonderful.
So
That
that
is absolutely wonderful. Yay, MC.
yeah, I'm gonna go to Holmes first and then go to MC. It's just Holmes
Wonderful.
has, I think usually junior college is usually the more cheaper option to start out, and
Exactly. That's very smart, and it's a great. I'm telling you, you get more for your money. That's for sure.
yeah, and so I'm planning on going to Holmes and first, and then go to MC and everything.
Wonderful.
And my
Yay.
mom went to MC, and she says she's met you. I don't know. You meet so many different people. I don't know if you know her name, but
What's her name?
Tamara Mangum. She will goes
Her,
to social work.
oh my gosh, her name is so familiar. If I saw her face, I bet I would remember. I'm great with faces, terrible with names.
Well, she's got like blonde curly hair, and she
Right?
goes to I'm bad with describing people.
But
But
I bet you I know her because if she's involved in social work, I know I've met her.
yeah, she says she's met you, and I've known some people. Like my grandfather, dad is Henry Boynton, who used to work, I think, Dillard's. He said he met you one time.
Oh wow. Oh my God, because I stay in Dillard's. Even before the pandemic, especially, I was always in there.
But I think this was years ago. But
Okay.
still,
Okay.
still, anyway. But I think it's pretty cool. I met,
That
but
is
the only
cool.
thing is, I wanted to get in contact with Barbie Batson, but I wasn't able to get in contact with her. But I've met her before as a first grader when she came to my school.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God. All of us have been here for years, years.
But I know we've kind of gone down a rabbit trail. But I was just trying to say that this is where I've been always been more into speaking and writing and doing all this stuff. I've even tried starting with our class. We've done editing, and a lot of it's
Awesome.
been really have been really I found out that I wanted to do it. But it's kind of funny. We've talked about how um, how our family, like I said, is a lot of people who work like in trades or go to the military, and then here we are. My brother wants to be a doctor, and I want to be a journalist.
That is awesome. That's wonderful, though. Everybody has to get on their own path. That's what I say. I have to find my own lane, and that's what you're doing.
Okay, so do you have a biggest influence for the field that you looked up to?
Um, to be honest with you, I grew up. I remember seeing Walter Cronkite. I grew up watching Bert Case, and my grandparents always watched Woody Asaph, so I knew him. But it didn't really push me or give me a desire to get into the industry. Um, I remember watching Carol Simpson on the weekends on ABC, and I thought she was the most beautiful and glamorous. And of course, Barbara Walters, people like that. And then Ed Bradley on 60 Minutes and things of that nature. But I was more influenced, I think, watching people who were in the field of law. I mean, I grew up, and I even to this day, if Perry Mason is on, the old black and white Perry Mason, I'm watching it. I mean, I love those I love the mystery shows that have the legal thrillers involved in them. Jagged Edge, which is an old Glenn Close movie. Um, but if it involved law, I was always drawn to it and interested in it. So, I'd have to say there were people that I saw and I admired, but it didn't really give me that desire to be in television news. But now that I am in television news, I respect what they did even more. The folks that I did see, who I got to know, because this is not always an easy industry. It's very challenging. It's different every day. It's very rewarding, but it also requires some sacrifices. Many times we have to work holidays and when you want to be with your families. There are times that you work extra hours. We're on call when there's bad weather or when there's something big happening. You have to be able to adjust. And so, again, it's a very challenging and it can be an extremely stressful field. But it's to me, the rewards far outweigh any of that.
Yes. But Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because really the people who I look up to are you and Howard Ballou, Barbie
Thank
Bassett,
you.
because like you said, WLBT has really been my number one news source out of all of them you can find on
Well,
the
thank
internet or
you.
on news or anything. Uh,
Well, we work really hard to make sure that we bring the facts. One of the first things that Bert Case taught me, and Walter Sadler, who was here when I got here, I don't know if you remember Walter Sadler. I grew up watching him as well. But one of the first things that they taught me was the importance of facts and giving both sides. And it's not about your opinion. It's not your job to tell people what to think, how to think, who to choose, who not to choose. You give people the information and they are smart enough to make up their own minds. And that has stayed with me.
mhm. And I think that's really good. And also, I think it's really, and this is a side note here. I really think it's really cool because you can go on YouTube and see some stuff from way back when. And
Oh,
see,
yes. The hairstyles and the fashions. Oh, my.
I mean, well, that and it's really to me, it's really cool because I've always loved old stuff.
Yes.
Like I'm a huge like you mentioned Perry Mason. I would love to. I could sit down with my grandfather and watch Turner Classic Movies and Me TV and all that kind of stuff
Yes. Oh,
all day
yes.
long. I love black and white old stuff. Like for instance, like during this time of year being Christmas, my favorite Christmas movie is It's a Wonderful Life.
One of mine too. Yes, definitely.
I love that
Definitely.
movie, and that to
Yes.
me, it's just one of those things. Is I like looking back at old clips of things, and I even just like looking at the look of the way it used to look back then.
Exactly. Things have changed so much now. So much is done by computers.
And Howard Ballou, that was his one of his biggest things when I talked to him just a few minutes ago. Was his
Yes.
is that everything's changed with all the technology.
Oh,
And,
yes. Technology is totally different. When I first started, we had big, bulky editing machines and cassettes that went in them that were this wide, and you'd have to go from one to the other and then run it back to the control room. And now everything is done on our desktop or on your laptop. We can edit a story. We can do a story almost completely on our phone, a live shot on our phone. It's so many different things that technology has changed. And, and you have to keep up with the technology if you want to stay relevant in this business.
um, okay, so my next question is how and when can I start out? Like, what is the process of going from when you go to school and get your degree to when you actually find a job?
Well, one of the first things I would say to you is while you're in school, and I know COVID has changed that, but do as many internships as you possibly can. I know some people are doing them online where you get that interaction, but it's important to do internships because they count as experience. And a lot of times when you do these internships, not only do you gain the experience and the knowledge and learn how because you're watching us put stories together, but I've had students who do internships with us and use that as a reference to do them in larger markets, even at NBC. And all of that helps you in finding a job. They do require a degree. I was fortunate enough that I got hired in my senior year, and and I always planned to go ahead and take care of that. But once I got here and got the experience, I put that on the back burner. But I was fortunate. Now you have to have a degree. They ask for a minimum of 3 years experience, but because it is so difficult to find great people now, they are giving more college students, college graduates, fresh out of school, giving them more opportunities to train them and get them ready. So, but again, all of these students have also done internships. So it's important. Mississippi College has a television station. So Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Jackson State, USM, all of these schools, Belhaven, they have the equipment and things that you need in order for you to be able to actually get that experience of being on the air, of writing stories, and that's important. But what if you do the internships, you get the experience, and then I would start applying every place I can. And usually they like for you to start out small and move your way up. But like I said, recently, in the recent years, in the last couple of years, or 3 years, we've seen more college graduates fresh out of school get these opportunities, and then they are trained. But you have to have a resume tape in order to do that.
Mhm.
And what I get asked all the time by students is, well, how do I get a resume tape and I don't have a job? Well, that's why it's important to do internships. And it's important for you to work with your instructors as well as your advisor in college to make sure that everything you write, that you're doing things on camera that you can save to your computer. And then that's how you put a resume tape together, because usually you can't even get a job interview unless you have that resume. A lot of kids are doing things on YouTube now. One student who did not have the opportunity to do an internship actually took her phone and just went out and did stories on like her family, people in her neighborhood, and put it together and sent that in. So you have to be creative now in how you, but you can't even get an interview without that resume tape. So I would already be thinking like the things you're doing in high school um, won't actually count because they want to see your most recent material. One of the things that I've learned in this business is I'm only as good as my last newscast. If I bomb that last newscast, that's what people tend to remember. So they like to have fresh material. But again, with all the technology we have, you can do that. A lot of the kids set up, as I said, YouTube channels where they do work and load it up to YouTube. They set up social media accounts and say, one young lady did that with Twitter. She used Twitter and she would put up just video of her talking, video of her doing interviews with just random people. She put it on Twitter and she did it once a week until she got a job.
That's pretty good.
So yeah, it's about being creative, and and that's what you said. I'm looking for a job. Take a look at what I bring to the table, or this is my report for this week. Remember, I'm still looking for a job. This is how you reach me. I mean, it was very creative. So I would say you're only as limited as your imagination is when it comes to that. So I wouldn't get discouraged. I would just make sure that they see that I have the ability to do this.
And do you and how to intern, like when of course with internships, just say at WLBT, how do
Yes.
I asked Howard Ballou this, and I wanted to see what your input was. How do internships translate to jobs? Do y'all have?
Well, and that depends on you. We've had interns who come through here who did nothing but answer the phone. Well, we don't have a position for you just to answer the phone. We've had interns who come in and they're interested in photography and they've gotten a job as a photographer. We don't do photographers anymore. They're called MMJs, multimedia journalist, which means that they can not only shoot the video, but they can also do stories. So that's what most of the industry is moving toward now, is that you're not just a photographer, you're not just a reporter, you're both, or even more than that. So our interns were able to go out on stories. It's about their initiative. It's about how much initiative you show, how much talent you show, how much determination you show, and then the skill. If you're willing to learn, if you're willing to work hard. And we've had interns who've come in and they were interested in being producers, got in, jumped in when there's breaking news or something is happening, and what can I do to help? It's about your initiative. And that's how internships help. And even if we don't have a position, Gray Media has so many stations. You show that initiative, you show that talent, that dedication, the integrity, and you've got management who would recommend you to other news directors. So it all depends on you and what you bring to that internship.
Mhm. That's good. So, well, the next thing is, and this is something that I've asked also. Also, of course, you mentioned the resume tape,
Yes.
which the course that goes into showing your, I guess, your resume visibly and your experience. I first heard about that because before we were assigned job shadowing, I actually had the opportunity to talk to Cecil Hannibal. Are you familiar with him at
Yes.
WAPT? He
Right.
talked to me,
Yes.
and he was really we had a good conversation, and he was the first one that really introduced me to the idea of a resume tape.
Right.
And um, so yeah, he so I'm really trying to been interested. I've looked up some. He has his own on YouTube. You can
Right.
go pull it up right now and watch it. There, you got all kind. There's even some folks from WLBT like Latrice Clark. She's got hers on YouTube. You can find. There's
Right.
there's all kinds of stuff that you can look at and see what other people have done too, and kind of
Exactly.
get you an idea of what they expect.
Right.
I guess you could say it's like what do you can look at, you see which ones worked and what was the winning tape, and to see where what they're looking for in their different various things.
Right. And I think it's, that you can do whether it's a story on a tobacco spitting contest or a 5 card pile up or a mass shooting. The fact that you can be flexible, that you could cover any of those kinds of stories. I think that is what, news directors are looking for, the ability to be a good storyteller and make people interested in the story, regardless of what it is. Um, I've covered all kinds of stories, and a lot of times now reporters think, oh, why am I doing this? Why are they sending me to a tobacco spitting contest or watermelon seeds? But it's what you bring to that story. You can make it as interesting as you want to, or you can act like this has been, and that's one of the things that I say about those of us who've been around for a long time. We've covered all kinds of stories, and we tried to make every single story interesting to the audience because it's not about you, it's about the people we serve.
And something that to that note that Howard Blue brought up that I did not know idea anything about it was we were talking about what was it? We were mentioning some. We brought up this something about Courtney Ann Jackson and how she does interviews. Well, we were talking about the interviews. Some are on Zoom and some of them are face to face. And I talked about
Right,
Courtney Ann Jackson being with in person with Tate Reeves, and we got
right.
to a conversation about how that there was like something like there's certain specialties like because like I've understood like I've seen Courtney and Jackson majority of the stuff she does is more government based stuff.
Right, right. She's our legislative reporter in government, so she does a lot of those. For me, it's been mostly issues affecting children, the elderly, the State Department of Child Protection Services, Department of Human Services, more people related, and education. Those have been the things that have been my focus. But at the same time, I've done all kinds of stuff. I've done the political stories. I've done our debates. I did the debate with Cindy Hyde Smith and Mike Espy the
I
first
saw
time
that.
around. Yes,
And I
and
would ask, go ahead. Sorry.
go ahead. Go
I was
ahead.
just
No.
going to ask about your experience on that because that's pretty cool. I would that would be something I think would be fun to do.
Well, they're very interesting. And, the thing is, no matter how hard you try, and my thing was just being fair and the integrity of it, you're always going to have critics and somebody who thinks, I mean, look at the presidential debates. People were very critical of Chris Wallace.
Yeah.
And, there were some who were critical of Kristen Welker. And there were some who were critical. I mean, there everybody has different opinions, so all you can do is your best. But it's always interesting. I'm not one of those people who particularly enjoys politics. That's one field I will never be involved in. I'm not I study it, and I carry out my civic duty of voting. I think that's critical and important. But I would never run for office. And if my husband ever told me he was going to, I'd have to say with what wife, because No, don't do it. Don't do it. Um, but um, but it's, all of us have different areas. Howard has been great with, uncovering government corruption. He does a lot on with the federal judicial system, and and then law enforcement. And so all of us have different areas. They call them the beat system. So each of us have a beat, and some of it is based on what you're interested in. You get a chance to pitch what you're interested in, and but most of my background has been with children and children's issues, and so that's what I've focused
Is
on.
that what brings you to the social work conferences?
Yes, it is. I don't know. When I started doing Wednesday's Child in 1985, I had been here 3 years. And when I learned, and I did a lot of work with judges and social workers to make sure I understood what it meant to be a special needs child, the adoptive process. And I did that on my own, but it was because I wanted to know and I wanted to really fully understand. And it made me an advocate, a child advocate. It also made me an advocate for adoption and foster parents. But it also made me aware of so many of the atrocities that go on, and how thankful we should be for those great social workers who deal with so much.
Yes.
And I had an interview, the first sit down interview with the new director of Child Protection Services. And she did such a fantastic job because she was a social worker and has a law degree as well. And she talked about the stress of the job. It's a traumatic job, and it's one that is so underappreciated because people don't fully understand the important work that they do.
Yeah, and my mom, she used to be a social worker at Hudspeth and Whitfield, and her
Oh,
heart is
wow.
special needs children.
Awesome.
She just
Yes, I
she
get to
just
work with them
loves
too.
she just loves, that is just her heart. I mean, really.
Oh, awesome. She's an
She
angel.
yes. Um, and so the another thing I'm curious about, what are the hours for morning and evening shifts? Y'all, I've heard y'all talk about different shifts and everything.
Right.
Where I know that changes probably based on what's happening, but what is in a general? If you just had just a general day, what are the hours for each shift?
Well, for me, I'm usually here between, and it varies because depending on stories, I've been here as early as 9:30 in the morning and get off at 11 or 11:30. But a typical day where I don't have to come in early or work late, I'm usually here between 1:30, 1:45. We have a meeting that starts at 2 where we go over the assignments and the stories, and we pitch ideas. That's usually from 2 to 2:30. And then, of course, I anchor the 5, the 6, and the 10. So I'm usually here every night until about 11:30. So generally, um, but my day starts long before that because a lot of times I'm doing things in the community before COVID, especially not as much now. But I've had things as early as 8 o'clock in the morning, which means I have to get up by 6.
Hmm.
So, but the typical shifts are 1:30, um, 1:30 between 1:30 and 2 until 11 or 11:30, and the mornings 9:30 until 6:30, and then the early morning, it depends on whether they do the 4:30, but usually that's 3 until about 1, or 4 to about 1:30.
Yeah. And like for instance, I know you've done a lot of speaking engagements and
Yes.
things, and but anyway, but the one thing I will definitely, and I'm excited for some of the events. Like one event that I heard that you do that I've never been before. My parents have been, but I would love to be able to see you in person when COVID, kind of hopefully goes away sometime soon. Is Pepsi
Soon.
Pop.
Yes. Sooner rather than later.
I would love to be able to go to Pepsi Pop.
Oh, yes. Pepsi Pops is one of my favorites. Yes. We have such a great time. I do that with Marshall Ramsey, and I just love him. He's such a great friend, a dear friend. And I admire and respect him so much and what he does. But yes, that's one of the greatest. It's such a beautiful night. especially when we have good weather.
And I would love for hope, maybe, hopefully, of course, it all depends on what the situation is with COVID, but I hope that maybe we'll be able to do it again because I've never been. So I would love to be able to come over there, enjoy some music, and be able to maybe even meet you in person.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yes, I'm praying for COVID to go away because there are so many big events that help support our charities and our nonprofits and, you know, our Mississippi Symphony Orchestra. I mean, they've done some things virtually and online, but it's not the same as being there in person.
Yeah.
And that's a big fundraiser for them. So I'm hoping that COVID goes away too. And I'd love to meet you.
Yes. All right. So you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I know this is and all the three people I've talked to, it's been a little complicated. But what is
Yes.
the day in the life of Maggie Wade?
Oh my gosh. It varies from day to day. There are times that I'm babysitting my granddaughter who is 8, which means that my day starts very, very early, and with her telling me whether or not she wants pancakes, French toast, waffles, whatever she wants for breakfast. And so, and then keeping her entertained and having her wear me out. I don't know if you saw, I put on a post earlier that, as a matter of fact, Monday, and I said, after the grilling, she gave me about honeybees because she wanted to research honeybees and why they're dying. And then she grilled me. I mean, she was asking me all these questions and talking about it. And I said, I need a muscle relaxer, an Advil, which I can't take, a BC powder, and therapy after this grilling from this 8-year-old. But in which one of her conclusions was that grown-ups need to do better. That was and to help the honeybees. So I was like, I agree with you on that. But I have days like that. I have days where I do have speaking engagements, and then there are days that I have interviews early and I come in. But I start every single day, and my day doesn't go right when I don't get a chance to do this, but I try to start every day just by having time to give God thanks, to pray, to ask for his wisdom in going through the day on every story that I cover, on every person that I encounter, to treat them the way I want to be treated, with dignity and respect and honesty. And so I start out doing that. I have my cup of green tea that I add hazelnuts and cinnamon and nutmeg to, a little honey. I have my cup of tea, and usually if I have time, I'll go and look at WLBT's website, NBC's website, and then I'll look at other news sources just to see what is going on both locally and nationally. Because now, even overnight, there's stuff going on. I read every single day. And then it depends on, like I said, whether I have a speaking engagement. I did a lot of volunteering in schools, everything from reading books to if they have a program, speaker, this kind of thing. I do a lot of that. I've spoken to in management, basically encouragement. I work with a lot of the charities. I'm on boards, so a lot of times I have board meetings that I have to run off to, and then I get here, and it's a whole nother kind of busy. I average between 500 is a low count for emails for me in a day. Usually it's closer to between I would say between 8 and 1,000 emails a day. And I try to go through all of those, which is difficult. We have to maintain our social media pages. That is now a part of our responsibility, is making sure that we stay engaged with our audience as much as we can. And that's important to me too. And then once I leave here, I go home and kick off my shoes and try to wind down, spend a little time with my husband, talking to him about his day, and we talk a little bit about mine. And it's shower and bed. I can't get enough sleep. I don't ever get enough, so it's like I try to go to sleep. And on my days off, I like tennis. I don't get to play tennis nearly enough, but I do enjoy tennis. I was actually teaching my son how to play when he was little because I played on the tennis team for a little bit. Well, we had a class. I did tennis for 2 semesters at MC. So tennis, reading my Bible, oh my gosh, that there's nothing like that.
Yes.
And spending time with my family, um, and watching old movies like you talked about, and Hallmark. This is the time of year that I watch lots of when I have time. But if I turn the TV on, more than likely it's Hallmark or Hallmark movies and mysteries where they have all the Christmas love stories.
Yeah.
So I don't like violence, a lot of violence and things of that nature. So
That's kind of how
I'm a
I am.
creature of habit.
I don't like movies with a lot of bad language. I don't
Yeah,
like it, especially when it has blasphemy in it. That just
yeah.
that just kind of, and like I said, I'm not big on the violence or anything like of that nature. So either I don't watch it, or we have services like VidAngel where you can censor movies and stuff like
Gotcha.
that
That's good.
that I do. So I don't care for that, you know. And this is something I want to go ahead and bring up. I was saving this as one of the last ones, but I want to go ahead and bring it up. What is your
Yes, because I've got to run and do a promo shoot. They're waiting for me. But go
okay?
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. What is your advice for a Christian entering in this field?
Um, Keep God first. Never be ashamed of who you are or your faith.
Mhm.
Never be afraid to share the gospel if someone is willing. I don't force people. I've learned as a Christian, it's not my job to convince or convict. I don't judge, nor am I trying to convince someone to believe what I believe. If someone comes to me freely and openly and wants to talk about my faith and wants to hear about salvation, I share that. But it's also my compass and it's my guide in every story that I do. And by that, I mean to tell the truth, to not embellish, to not sensationalize. To not try to bring my how I feel, regardless of what my opinion is, not to bring that into the story, but to focus on the facts and the truth. And there are so many blurred lines now for those who don't know what truth is. It's like we do not put the emphasis on truth. There are no gray areas in truth. It's either truth or a lie. It's real simple. And we have and that's one of the things that I hate now is that if a lie is told long enough, loudly enough, and pushed enough, people tend to believe it. But my faith also teaches me a lie will spread, but it can't stand.
Yeah.
So no matter how long it takes. So my thing is never lose sight of who you are. Never try to be something or someone else, and that is possible. As hard as it may sound, it's possible when you keep God first. And I heard a sermon a long time ago that says, "Whatever we compromise to keep, we'll surely lose."
Mhm.
And so I don't compromise when it comes to my faith. Um, I'm willing to compromise with people um, on issues, but not when it comes to my faith. It's God. He's first and foremost. I give him all the glory. And, I'm not ashamed of that. I don't hide from that. I'm not perfect, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I am. But thank God for his faithfulness and his grace and his mercy.
Yes. And I think that we should, as Christians, in everything we do, put the authority of His Word and
Yes.
in everything that it says. It may not be the popular thing, but we need to stay with it because it's what really is the only truth there is.
Well, if the light is there, it shines and it shines brightly. You don't have to say a word. The light speaks for itself. And the Bible tells us that God is light and there's no darkness. You can't find any darkness in him. So it's about being a light wherever we can be. And that's one thing that's great about this job. We can shine a light in dark places if we allow ourselves to be servants and to remember that we serve the public, the community. It's not about us. We are public servants.
Yes. And I'm so glad to have someone like you as a Christian influence on on TV news. It's really
Oh, thank
encouraging.
you.
And
Well, I just want to give him glory. It's about him, not about me.
and so I think a lot of you in a lot of ways, because a lot of it, not only because of your the way you do on there, but also of your faith as well, and how you really don't compromise, and then you're very outgoing with it. That's very encouraging.
Well, thank you. I'm aware that there are people who don't like it. And really, when you get my age, you don't worry what people think.
Hmm.
Look, I know where my light and my life come from. Every breath that I take, every blink of my eye belongs to the Lord. So I can't worry about what people think about me. I just can't give that time. And yeah, there are hurtful things that happen, there are negative things, but I've learned to give it about 3 seconds, long enough to say, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, pray for them and move on.
Yes, and that's good. So there's two more things I wanted to ask you, and then I know you got to go, but
Right. Yes.
you got to do. But I had a couple things. One thing, something you brought up that I hadn't been able to get, and not because I didn't get it from them, just because I didn't have time to ask them. But uh, what is sources for good? What are the sources that y'all use for good research?
The best source is talking to people one on one who are the experts in whatever. If I'm talking about law enforcement,
Mhm.
I'm going to go to law enforcement, whether it's the police chief or an officer on the street, or if it's on the federal level. So if I'm doing a story about law enforcement, I'm going to talk to a person in that area. If it's on education, I'm going to talk to an educator. If it's social work, go to the social worker and or someone at Child Protection Services. So those, you have to go to those who have the authority, the credibility, and the knowledge. um, I'm not going to go to I'm not going to go down to the dog pound to talk to somebody about healthcare. It's kind of, I don't want to say common sense, because my dad always said if it was common, more people would have it. But it just depends on what the story is. If I'm doing a story, um, you know and like I said, I do lots of them. If I'm doing a story about the city of Jackson and water bills, I'm going to talk to someone who deals with that. And we try to get people as much as possible, because I think you need to have that human face. If you're covering a murder, um, and this one is hard for me, and I'll be honest with you, I don't like to do it, and more often than not, I don't, unless the family reaches out to me. But the most gripping stories and the stories that touch your heart are the stories where a loved one is lost, and that family puts a face and shares that. That's not just a number. That's not just murder number 123. That was a son or a daughter, or a child, and a mother or a father. And it's hard to do that, because I'm not going to stick a mic in somebody's face and a camera when they're grieving. you know to me, that's insensitive, and it's not necessary. So, but when they are ready to talk, those are the most heart gripping stories. And they help us to remember and not be so desensitized to the violence that's out there, because people are losing those that they love to violence. And people need to see that face. But those are the sources. The sources are the people themselves that see something and pick up the phone and call us and say, I just saw this. And then, of course, we have to check into it. We have to verify it. And usually we have to verify it with whoever that authority is. If it's a story on storm damage, I'm going to MEMA
Mhm.
and talk to MEMA. And then, of course, going into that community, talking to the people who are impacted by it. So it just depends on what the story is that determines the sources.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and you were talking about this is Howard Ballou was telling me this, and I we talked about this too. You got to be discerning on everything.
You
Like
do.
you don't have to. Of course, you want to talk to people, and of course, you want to hear what they have to say, but you got to be discerning to make sure reliable versus unreliable sources and da
Right.
da da. So
Well, there are people who will try to use the media to push their agenda, whatever it may be.
mm,
And you have to know when it's someone, as you said, who's credible and not credible.
yes. And my last question I want to ask you is there any parting words of wisdom or advice you would like to give me?
Definitely. The first thing I would say is make sure this is truly the field that you want to go into. Um, it's not always about the money. This is not one of those fields. I think a lot of people see the people on national television and think they're going to get rich. And if you work in Mississippi in television, unless you're in sales or in the upper management type thing, make sure that this is what you truly love and this is what you're called to do. And I would say that about any profession.
Hmm.
Make sure that every opportunity you get to read and to expand your vocabulary and to work on your pronunciation of words and the definition and knowing the words, train yourself to think quickly on your feet, to be able to adjust and shift, because you never ever know what's going to happen and you don't always have a script. So it's important, if you're well versed and if you're well read and if you have that vocabulary, you can always fall back on that. And, also, I guess the last thing would be is to never lose sight of the fact that you are a servant of the people. You're their eyes where they can't see, such as in the ears. They may not be able to get into that meeting, but you're there and they're depending on you to give them the information that they need to make decisions that impact their lives. Remember that you do shed a light on things and issues that impact people every single day, whether it's corruption or crime. And that's serious. It's a serious responsibility. And it's also a privilege and honor to be able to do that. So just make sure that as you go into this, that you remember, one, that it's a privilege and honor to be able to have that micro. We live in the greatest country in the world where there is freedom of speech, and what you do impacts that. Um, the power of that mic and camera can build people up or it can tear them down. And the most tragic thing is when that happens and the person is innocent, or you've been given wrong information. So there's also power. Don't take that power lightly. And always remember that, again, what you're doing, um, there are people who have shed blood, sweat, and tears to make sure that we can get information in this country, and that freedom of speech and that freedom to make people aware of what's going on, what our government officials are doing, um, the decisions that are being made that impact lives every day, that we have the ability to share that with the public. And that truly is, you know, it's a right, it's a privilege, and it's a great responsibility.
Yes. Thank you so much for taking your time out.
You're
I
welcome. I
would
enjoyed
love to
getting to
be
see
able.
you via Zoom.
Yeah, I would love to see. I would love to meet you in person, whether
Me
that
too.
be, hopefully when some of this COVID stuff goes away, or
Yes.
maybe something like Pepsi Pop, or even I mentioned Howard Balloon. Maybe one day when everything's all said and done, we can maybe even go to. I could schedule sometime to go up here to the station.
Exactly. I hope that happens soon.
Yes, I would really enjoy it. I've been. Let's just say this. Like literally, I think it was this past summer that we went. We went. Daddy, we were in Jackson doing something. I think he had to, and we were. we went by the station and we literally looped around the parking lot and came right through back through.
Oh, wow. Well, it's usually always hopping around here. A lot of people are working remotely, so it's a little different. But it's been just really a pleasure to meet you via
Yeah.
Zoom and to talk with you. Please tell your mom and your granddad hello for me.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. And like I said, I hope
You're
to see you in
welcome.
person one day.
I do too. Look, hopefully that will happen sooner rather than later.
Yes. And I will see you on the news tonight too.
Yes, I will be there 5, 6, and 10.
All right. All right. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. I did too. You be blessed.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.